Seniors, I'm begging you. Learn these stroke signs fast. My dear friend, especially those of you already past 60, I want to say this as a heartfelt plea. Please learn the warning signs of stroke before it's too late. Do you realize that just a 10-minute delay can cost you your speech, your steady steps, and sometimes even your life? Can you believe that there are people who seem completely fine, having breakfast, chatting with their family, and in the blink of an eye, one side of their body no longer moves? What's even scarier is that most patients don't even recognize they're having a stroke because real-life symptoms often look very different from what books describe. So how can you or your loved ones know how to act in time? I have spent years studying hundreds of medical reports from the Mayo Clinic and the American Stroke Association, and the discovery shocked me. You only need to remember 4 letters, FAST, to save your own life or that of someone you love. FAST isn't just a formula, it's a key that can open the door to recovery if you recognize the signs and call for emergency help right away. But let me ask you, are you truly confident that you know what each letter in FAST stands for and how to distinguish real warning signs from false alarms? Before I reveal these 4 life-saving letters in detail, I want to ask you something important. Are you serious about preventing stroke for yourself and your family? If so, please hit the subscribe button right now and drop a number in the comments. Type 1 if you want me to keep making more in-depth videos on senior health, or type 0 if you think it's not necessary yet. What do you think? Couldn't a simple action like typing 1 number be worth it if it brings you life-saving knowledge? Now, picture this. You're looking at a loved one's face. Suddenly, their smile looks different. One side of their mouth droops, and they don't even notice. Could that be the very first warning sign of a stroke about to strike? And if it is, will you be able to recognize it in time and become the one who saves their life?
F. Face drooping. When a smile disappears without you knowing, can you believe that a smile could be the brain's silent cry for help? Inside our brain lies a small region that controls facial muscles, located in the opposite hemisphere. Just a tiny blood clot, no bigger than a grain of rice, can block blood flow to that area, and instantly one side of the face loses its response. No pain, no numbness, no warning. The person may feel perfectly normal, but those looking at them can see the truth. The smile is crooked, one corner of the mouth droops, or the crease along the cheek fades away. Have you ever really looked closely at a loved one's smile just to spot that tiny difference? The danger is that most patients don't realize anything is wrong. They believe they're fine, still talking, still eating, still carrying on as usual. But meanwhile, their brain is quietly losing control. According to the American Stroke Association, more than 70% of ischemic stroke patients show facial drooping within the first 10 minutes. Yet nearly half of those cases are ignored because family members assume it's just fatigue or a crooked denture. What do you think? If the chance to save the brain rests in a smile, but you miss it, how costly could that be? I remember Mrs. Betty, 74, sitting down for breakfast with her husband. Everything seemed normal until he noticed her smile wasn't even anymore. Without hesitation, he called 911. A CT scan later revealed a blockage in a small branch of the middle cerebral artery, the one that feeds the facial muscles. Because he acted fast, she avoided facial paralysis, avoided losing her speech. Just 5 days later, she walked out of the hospital healthy. Do you see how sometimes one quick decision by a loved one can change the rest of a life? So here's the question for you. Tomorrow, if you see your loved one smile and one side of their mouth doesn't lift the way it always has, will you assume it's just fatigue, or will you call for help immediately? And do you know that when the brain takes away a smile, it may also take away an arm?
A. Arm weakness. When your hand is no longer your own. Have you ever dropped something from your hand without knowing why? The hand is still there, but it no longer obeys you. In reality,
Each arm is controlled by the opposite side of the brain. When blood flow to that brain region is cut off, the muscles lose control, even though you remain conscious. No pain, no tingling, just sudden weakness. Would you dare to try it now? Raise both arms to shoulder height and hold for 5 seconds. If one arm drifts down, that could be your brain crying out for help. Many people dismiss this sign, thinking it's just a bad sleeping position, shoulder pain, or just getting old. But the difference lies in how it happens. Sudden, unusual, painless, and only on one side. Research from Harvard Medical School shows that if someone cannot hold both arms up for 5 seconds, there's a 93% chance they are in the early stage of a stroke. What do you think? If a simple 5-second test could save a brain, wouldn't you try it? So the question is, if tomorrow at breakfast your hands suddenly cannot hold a spoon, will you think it's just weakness, or will you treat it as an emergency? And if the arm no longer obeys, what will happen to your voice?
S. Speech difficulty. When you know what you want to say but can't get the words out. Have you ever dreamed that you were speaking but no sound came out? With a stroke, that can happen in real life while you're fully awake. The patient can still understand what you're saying, they still want to respond, but the words won't come. That's because the blood flow to the brain's language centers, Broca's area or Wernicke's area, has been cut off. It's as if the communication cable between the brain and the mouth is suddenly severed. The symptoms often start subtly. Speech becomes slower than usual, the wrong word slips out, certain sounds are mispronounced, or sentences turn into gibberish. The danger is that patients themselves rarely notice. They think they're talking normally. Families often dismiss it as fatigue or emotion. But if you ignore it, the golden window for treatment slips away. A 2019 study in the Stroke Journal showed that nearly 40% of stroke patients had language problems within the first hour, but only 12% realized it. That means 88% depended entirely on the listener. Are you sharp enough to recognize nonsense words when your loved one suddenly can't answer a simple question? So next time, if your loved one suddenly speaks unusually slow, chooses the wrong word, or can't repeat a simple sentence like, "The sky is blue," will you assume they're just tired, or will you treat it as an emergency? And do you realize that when speech begins to disappear, the clock is already ticking against the brain?
T. Time to call 911 when action decides life or death. Do you know that with every minute a stroke goes untreated, nearly 1.9 million brain cells die forever? Each lost minute means part of your speech, part of your memory, part of your movement, gone for good. Yet so many people hesitate. They wait. They call their children who live far away. They search on Google. And while they delay, their brain is dying. Have you ever thought that one late phone call could cost you the rest of your life? According to the American Heart Association, if treatment is given within the first 3 hours, the chance of full recovery can reach 70%. But after 5 hours, that chance drops below 20%. That's why FAST doesn't end with a symptom. It ends with an action. Call emergency immediately. You don't need to be 100% sure it's a stroke. You only need to suspect it and call. Would you rather wait 30 more minutes to be sure? Or act in 1 minute to keep your chance alive? So here's the final question. Tomorrow, if you see your loved one's face droop, their arm weaken, their words slur, will you wait 10 more minutes or act within 1? And do you realize that not every stroke begins with FAST? Sometimes it hides behind much subtler warning signs. Sudden, severe headache, when the pain is unlike any you've ever experienced. Have you ever had a headache from lack of sleep, stress, or changes in the weather? Those headaches are usually dull, tolerable, something you can get through. But imagine one day, a pain suddenly explodes in your head like a lightning strike, accompanied by nausea or dizziness, so overwhelming that you cannot ignore it. Could that really be just an ordinary headache? In fact, for some people, especially those over 60 with a history of high blood pressure, the very first sign of a stroke is not facial drooping or weakness in the arms, but a sudden, excruciating headache. This is often due to a subarachnoid hemorrhage, when a small blood vessel in the brain ruptures and blood leaks into the surrounding space. Statistics show that 10% of stroke patients experience this warning, but more than half mistake it for a migraine. Isn't it frightening to think that a headache considered the worst in your life might be dismissed simply as just a headache? A 68-year-old woman in Texas once collapsed at the dining table from a hammer-like pain in her head. Her family thought she was having a drop in blood pressure, so they gave her water and told her to rest. 20 minutes later, she lost consciousness, and by the time she reached the hospital, it was too late. What would you do if one day a headache struck with such sudden and unbearable force, unlike anything you've ever felt before? Would you wait for it to pass, or would you act immediately? And if a severe headache can be the first warning sign, then what might it mean when half of your world suddenly disappears before your eyes?
Loss of vision in one eye, when half the world suddenly vanishes. Have you ever closed one eye and tried to see with just the other? The feeling of losing half your world is terrifying. But with stroke, this can happen without you even closing your eyes. Within minutes, it may feel like a curtain has been pulled over one eye. Everything blurs, then disappears without any pain at all. Have you ever thought that sudden loss of vision in one eye could be your brain crying out for help? This is often a sign of transient ischemia in the part of the brain responsible for vision, or a blockage in the central retinal artery. It is not simply an eye problem, it is a type of mini-stroke. If ignored, a major stroke could follow just days later. According to the journal Neurology, 1 in 5 stroke patients had previously experienced this warning, but 70% did not get medical help in time because they thought it was just eye strain. What do you think? How dangerous is it to miss your last chance to save your vision simply because you thought it was nothing? Dizziness, vertigo, loss of balance, when you can no longer control your own legs. Have you ever stood up too quickly and felt a bit lightheaded? That's usually harmless. But what if dizziness strikes suddenly, violently, with the feeling that the whole house is tilting and you stagger as if drunk? Do you believe that in that moment your brain is losing control? Strokes in the cerebellum and brainstem can begin just like this. Patients often feel themselves being pulled to one side, unable to stand upright, sometimes vomiting repeatedly even without fever. Many cases are misdiagnosed as vestibular disorders, but research from Johns Hopkins shows that 12% of brainstem strokes are missed during the first medical examination. What would you think if this morning's dizziness was actually your brain crying for help? And if your legs could no longer keep you balanced, would your mind still remain sharp enough to understand what others were saying? Confusion, loss of understanding, when you can hear but no longer comprehend. Have you ever experienced hearing your loved one's voice but suddenly not understanding the meaning? Or perhaps you wanted to reply, yet the words that came out didn't match what you intended. This is not just ordinary age-related forgetfulness. It can be a sign that your brain is no longer able to process language because a blood vessel is blocked. What would you think if a single meaningless sentence might be the only warning before a stroke steals away your ability to communicate? Older adults often mistake this condition for temporary confusion, but according to the American Stroke Association, 23% of patients over 65 show confusion during a stroke. An elderly woman was once pouring milk when she looked at her daughter and said, "Give me that cloud to brush my teeth." At first, the daughter laughed, thinking her mother had misspoken. But just 30 minutes later, the woman could no longer form a single clear sentence. Do you believe that just one wrong word might be your last chance to act?
And if language itself can vanish, will the sensations in your body still remain intact?
Solutions when your brain needs daily protection. You have seen it clearly. Stroke waits for no one, and it can begin with a crooked smile, a spoon slipping from your hand, or a single meaningless sentence. But is there a way to reduce the risk before those signs strike? The good news is yes, and you don't need to change your whole life. You only need small, repeated daily actions. Are you ready to turn each tiny habit into a shield that protects your brain? First of all, the most important step is always having someone nearby who knows how to call for emergency help. Can you believe that many people lose their golden chance of survival simply because they live alone and no one is there to call? That is why you should prepare a list of phone numbers for your children, friends, or trusted neighbors. Stick it right next to the landline phone or save them under speed dial. What do you think if a single piece of paper on the wall could mean the difference between survival and losing the ability to walk for the rest of your life? Next is daily blood pressure monitoring. High blood pressure is like a silent enemy, causing no pain but steadily wearing down your blood vessels. You can pick one fixed time each morning, measure it, and record the result. Just 30 seconds a day in return for an entire region of your brain being safeguarded. Would you ignore such a simple habit just because you think you feel fine? The third step, memorize and repeat it often. You can stick the word fast on your refrigerator, your desk, or even keep it in your wallet. Share it with your children and grandchildren because sometimes it is a young grandchild who may save your life, just like the story of Linda I once told. Are you ready to make this 30-second knowledge an automatic reflex for the whole family? As for nutrition, you don't need to follow strict restrictions. Think of each meal as a chance to protect your brain's blood vessels. Add vegetables, beans, and fatty fish. Cut down on processed meats, repeatedly fried foods, and pastries. Just small changes, accumulated day by day, can keep your blood vessels healthier for years. What do you think if today's chopsticks of vegetables could give you one more healthy year to travel with your grandchildren? Finally, listen to your body. An unusual numbness, a fleeting moment of confusion, or a sensation that feels different from normal, all of these can be warning bells. Don't wait, don't endure, act immediately. Do you dare to treat the smallest signals as the last chance your body is sending to you?
You see, preventing stroke is not about making huge changes. It is about small habits, simple, easy to repeat, that carry enormous power. So after everything, what is the most important message I want to leave you with? And why is it that even at 60, 70, or 80 years old, you can still live healthy, live happy, live free, without fearing you will become a burden? From fear to hope. You have walked with me through this journey, from the fear of losing your smile, the weakness in your arms, the silence stealing your words, to the hidden signs like sudden vision loss, dizziness, or numbness on one side of the body. And now, do you still think stroke is something random, impossible to predict? Or have you realized that the brain always sends us warning signals? It is only a matter of whether we are attentive enough to hear them. The most important thing I want you to remember is this. The brain is not like the heart. A heart can receive a stent or undergo bypass surgery. But when a part of the brain dies from lack of blood, it can never come back. No matter if you turn back the clock by 30 minutes or even 5 minutes, do you see now that every single minute in the present is already shaping your future? Remember, stroke waits for no one, but you can stay one step ahead of it through knowledge, through habits, through timely action. And if one day you see someone's smile twist, their hand fall, or their words turn into nonsense, you will be the one to save their life. Wouldn't you want to become that lifesaver in the eyes of your loved ones? Act today. If you found this video helpful, share it right now with your friends, with your family members over 60, because the right information at the right time can save an entire family. Click subscribe, turn on the bell, so you won't miss other vital lessons on senior health, stroke prevention, and healthy aging. And don't forget to leave a comment. Have you ever experienced one of these warning signs? What would you do if tomorrow one of these signs appeared in your own family? You cannot control the clock of time, but you can control your choices today, and that choice will decide whether you continue to live healthy, live independently, and live joyfully with your children and grandchildren. So what do you choose, to wait for risk or to act now and hold on to your life?